Okay, welcome to Scratch. In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to make a very basic calculator using a coding language from Scratch. Now, if you're unsure how to get there, it's very simple. You can either just go to the website or in Google, if you type in Scratch, it will come up as the scratch.mit.edu. You could just open it right away. Now you can create an account. It's very easy and it is free, and you would just do that by in this little corner it will say sign up. But you can also go ahead and create a program without having an account. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go into create, and you're going to see that there's a project editor, and it comes up with this this screen. And within this screen has our different scripts. So you can kind of look around and you can see that all these different scripts give our different commands and different operators, and you're able to really program your program the way you'd like it to run. So because we're going to be creating a very basic calculator, we're just going to start off with the basic adding and subtracting. So the first thing I want my program to do is ask the user if you are going to be adding or subtracting. Now it does take a lot getting used to figuring out which one of these to use, but we're going to go into sensing. And we're going to go ahead and click this button and drag it to our where our project page is. And you can just double click this and type in anything you'd like. For this particular one, I'm just going to simply ask, would you like to add or subtract? So would you like to add or subtract? From here, we need to be able to input some type of answer. So one of the ways we can do that is by going to Control and using any one of these operations. Now I'm going to use this if, then, else command. And this should maybe look familiar from geometry using our logic. So if we say this, then something should happen, and we'll fill in that something as we go along. So one of the options is to say add. So if I want to make my if statement that if the user says add, I'm going to go to operators, and instead of literally saying if the user says add, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this operation equals, and I'm going to say if the answer, if the input equals add. So if I want to get that answer, whatever the person inputted, I'm going to go to sensing, and I'm going to go over here and check where it says answer. And that's going to allow the user, whatever they type in their answer as, whether it's add or subtract, it's going to save that answer. And I'm going to drag the answer right into this first bubble. So if my answer equals add, and I can simply just type that in, then I'm going to want the program to ask, well, what are our numbers? So if I want to ask what the numbers are, I'm going to go back over to sensing, where I am, and I'm going to ask, dragging it over into this column. So if my answer is add, then my program is going to ask, what is your, put a space there, what is your first number? Now I want to be able to give my program the opportunity to input the actual number, and the user to input the actual number. So in order to do that, we're going to go over to data. And basically, I'm going to make a variable because we're going to have two numbers. We're going to have the first number that we're adding or subtracting and the second. So I'm going to make a variable, and I'm just going to call that first variable number 1. And I'm going to do it for this sprite only. And I'm going to drag set number 1 over here. I'm going to put it right underneath ask, because once we ask what the first number is, I want whatever they input their number 1 to, I want to make that our new answer. So whatever the user inputs as number 1, that's what's going to be saved as our new answer. Now we're going to need to ask what the second number is. So similarly, I go to sensing, I'm going to go drag ask, to here, and I'm going to type in, what is your second number? Once again, we're going to have to set that second number that they input to our new answer. So I'm going to data. I'm going to have to make a new variable because I've already used number 1. We'll use this new variable as number 2. And again, for this sprite only. So I'm going to drag set number 2 over here. And we're going to set number 2 to that new input, whatever the user inputs. Now, once we have those two numbers, I want my program to actually add those two numbers. So in order to do that, and once again, this isn't just the only way to do this. This is one possible way, but you'll be able to play around with this and do your programs in multiple different ways. I'm going to go over to looks, and I want my program to say the answer. Now, my answer is going to be number 1 plus number 2. So I need to be able to set my program so that I can add those two numbers. So if I want them to add those two numbers, I'm going to go to operators, and I'm going to drag this addition right into where it says say, because I want my program to say the result of those two numbers being added. Now, because I want my number 1 plus my number 2 in here, I'm going to go over to data where my numbers were saved. I'm going to drag number 1 to this first little bubble. You can see it highlight. And number 2 to this second little bubble. So if my program is running smoothly, I should be able to do all of these commands. Now, before I start, you do want to be able to program this little green flag so that when you click it, your program starts. And the way you do that is by going to events. So I'm going to drag when the green flag is clicked, these commands should start. So clicking my green flag, my little cat says, would you like to add or subtract? So I'm going to type in add for now because that's the only one I've programmed. Enter. What is your first number? 2. Enter. What is your second number? 4. Enter. And it gives you your output. So right now we know this is running smoothly. Now let's take care of the else part. Well, what happens if our user does not type in add? What if they write in something else? Well, if they type in something else, we're still going to need to ask them what their first number and what their second number is. So if they type in subtract, we're still going to need that information. So we're going to follow these same steps. I'm going to go through this a little bit more quickly now. So my first step is going to be asking what the first number is, and then setting that first number. So I went over to data. I do have to change this to number 1, and I do want to change number 1 to my answer. So going to sensing, dragging over answer. Now I want to ask what my second number is. So I drag this over. Going back over to data to set number 2 to this answer. So it's already on number 2, going back to sensing and dragging my answer into here. Now that they've inputted their two answers, I want the program to say what those two numbers are, but subtracted. So I'm going over to sound, looks. See, it takes a while to get used to. Going over to say, and I want them to say the answer subtracted. So operators. This time, instead of using add, I'm going to use subtract. I want my two numbers to be subtracted. And now I have to input what those two numbers should be. So I want it to be the first number that was inputted minus the second number that was inputted. Let's test this program out. So I'm going to click my green flag. I'm going to put in subtract. What is my first number? 7. My second number, 11. And I get my input of, or output of, -4. Let me ask you guys a quick question. What if I typed in a totally irrelevant word? Maybe like cat. It's still going to ask me for my first number, so I'll do 5. Second number, let's do 9. And it gives me an output. Why do you think it subtracted those numbers even though I didn't say subtract? We'll continue to talk about this and kind kind of play around with these different programming features. That's the end of the video, and I will see you guys later.